Hey, it's Elena. Revenge Shift tells stories you won't forget. Subscribe if you're ready. Let's begin.
My father stood on my porch at 9:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning with a lawyer I'd never seen before. Not his estate attorney. Not his business lawyer. Someone new, carrying a leather briefcase that looked expensive enough to pay my property taxes for a year. "Olivia, we need to discuss the house," Dad said. No greeting. No small talk. Just that tone he'd used my entire life when he was about to tell me what I'd be doing, not asking. I was still in my pajamas, coffee mug in hand, planning to spend my Saturday morning doing absolutely nothing after working 60-hour weeks for the past 2 months. I'm 31 years old. I'm a senior data analyst for a mid-sized healthcare consulting firm. I've lived in this house for 4 years. And my parents were standing on my porch like I was being audited. "What about the house?" I asked, not moving from the doorway. The lawyer stepped forward. "Miss Chin, I'm Robert Whitmore. Your parents have asked me to prepare documentation regarding their investment in this property. They're exercising their claim to the asset based on their substantial financial contribution to the purchase." I stared at him. Then at my parents. My mother stood slightly behind my father, her arms crossed, wearing that expression she'd perfected over decades. The one that said she was disappointed in me but would never quite say why. "Their claim," I repeated slowly. Dad nodded, his jaw set in that way that meant he expected compliance. "This house is family investment property, Olivia. We put significant money into the purchase. We're entitled to either residency rights or liquidation of the asset. Mr. Whitmore has prepared the paperwork." The lawyer pulled documents from his briefcase. Actual eviction paperwork. A notice to vacate. A claim of ownership interest. Something cold settled in my stomach. Not panic. Not fear. Something else entirely. "Because you claim you funded the purchase?" I asked quietly. My mother finally spoke. "We put $200,000 into this house, Olivia. You couldn't have bought it without us. Now your father's retiring early due to the business sale and we need liquidity. This is a family asset. We have every right to reclaim our investment." I looked at the eviction notice. At my parents' signatures on the claim documents. At the lawyer who was already pulling out a pen, ready for me to sign acknowledgement of their ownership interest. "Give me one moment," I said. I walked inside, leaving them on the porch. My hands were steady as I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. I pulled up my mortgage documents. My bank statements from 2020. My pre-qualification letter. My closing paperwork. Then I pulled up something else. A spreadsheet I'd been maintaining for 11 years. Since I was 20 years old and my brother Marcus was 18. And our parents sat us both down to explain why Marcus's college would be fully funded while mine would not. I walked back to the porch with my phone in one hand and a manila folder in the other. "Actually," I said, opening my mortgage documents on my phone and turning the screen toward the lawyer. "Bank records show I qualified a loan with my income. Purchase price was $347,000. Down payment of $70,000 came entirely from my savings account. Mortgage of $277,000 in my name only. Qualifying debt-to-income ratio based solely on my salary of $92,000 at time of purchase. $0 from them." The lawyer took my phone. His expression changed as he scrolled through the documents. The pre-qualification letter dated February 2020. The closing statement showing my cashier's check for the down payment. The mortgage note with my name as the sole borrower. "I can't file this," he said quietly, handing my phone back. He looked at my father. "Mr. Chin, you told me you'd provided the down payment. These documents show otherwise." "We gave her money over the years," Dad said quickly. "Gifts. Support. That's how she saved for the down payment." I opened the manila folder. "This is a complete financial record of every dollar you've given me since I turned 18, I said. "Would you like me to read it out loud or would you prefer Mr. Whitmore review it privately?" My mother's face went white. My father's went red. "Olivia, this is inappropriate," Mom started. 2007, I continued, my voice level. "My freshman year of college. You and Dad gifted Marcus a car valued at $22,000. You gave me $300 for textbooks after I'd already purchased them with my work-study money. 2008, you paid Marcus's spring break trip to Cancun $1,400. You gave me a $50 Amazon gift card for my birthday. 2009. We don't need to hear this, Dad interrupted. But I'd already handed the folder to Mr. Whitmore, who was reading it with the expression of a man who suddenly understood he'd been lied to. Over 13 years, I said, you gave Marcus approximately $437,000. College tuition, living expenses, his car, his wedding, the down payment on his first business venture that failed, the bail money when he got his second DUI, the legal fees for his divorce. To me, you gave a cumulative total of $8,200. Most of it in the form of gift cards and one emergency loan of $2,000 when I had appendicitis my senior year, which I repaid in full within 6 months, with interest as documented. The lawyer closed the folder slowly. He looked at my parents with an expression I recognized. The same expression my high school guidance counselor had when she realized my parents wouldn't be contributing to my college fund. Disappointment mixed with unsurprised resignation. Mr. and Mrs. Chin, he said carefully, I was retained under the premise that you'd provided substantial financial backing for this property purchase. That's not supported by these documents. I can't file a fraudulent claim. It's not fraudulent, Dad snapped. She's our daughter. Everything she has because we raised her. With the child-rearing costs you provided equally to both children, I interrupted. Which is, legally and morally, your obligation as parents. Not an investment requiring return. My mother made a small sound. Not quite a gasp. Something more wounded. How can you be so cold about this? She asked. After everything we've done for you? I looked at her for a long moment. At the woman who'd signed Marcus's permission slips with a smile and mine with a sigh. Who'd attended every one of Marcus's basketball games and made it to maybe a quarter of my debate competitions. Who'd bragged about Marcus's B average while dismissing my 4.0 as expected, since you don't have his social commitments. Everything you've done for me is documented in that folder, I said quietly. Along with everything you did for Marcus. Would you like me to calculate the differential? I'm a data analyst. I'm very good with numbers. Mr. Whitmore was already packing his briefcase. I'm withdrawing from this matter. Mr. Chin, I'll be refunding your retainer minus the initial consultation fee. Miss Chin, I apologize for the intrusion on your Saturday. He left. Just walked down my porch steps and got into his car and drove away. My parents stood frozen. You can't do this, Dad said finally. We're your parents. You owe us respect. You owe us nothing, I said. I owe you nothing beyond what I choose to give. And right now, I'm choosing to give you 60 seconds to leave my property before I call the police and report you for attempted fraud and harassment. Fraud. Mom's voice went shrill. How dare you? You retained a lawyer under false pretenses to file a fraudulent ownership claim on property you have no legal interest in, I said. That's fraud. You also just committed attempted theft by deception. I have ring camera footage of this entire conversation. Would you like me to file a police report, or would you like to leave? The revelation hit them at different speeds. My mother looked shocked. My father looked like he was calculating whether I was bluffing. I wasn't bluffing. I have never asked you for anything I didn't earn, I said into their silence. I put myself through college on scholarships and 3 part-time jobs. I bought my own car with money I saved from working 60-hour weeks while taking a full course load. I lived in a studio apartment with 2 roommates for 4 years after graduation to save for a down payment while you were paying Marcus's rent in a luxury building. I did this alone. I built this alone. And you showed up today to take it from me because you decided Marcus's bad investments were my problem to solve. My mother flinched. How did you? Marcus called me 3 weeks ago, I said. Drunk at 11 p.m., crying about how his crypto investments tanked and he owes people money. He said Mom told him I'd come through his family and help him. That you were working on getting access to my assets. I thought he was just drunk dialing. I didn't realize you were actually planning this. The silence stretched out. Birds were singing somewhere. A neighbor was mowing their lawn 2 houses down. Normal Saturday morning sounds while my parents stood on my porch, caught in an attempted theft of my home. We raced you, Dad said finally. His voice had lost its commanding edge. He just sounded old. Doesn't that mean anything? You raced me to be invisible, I said. To be the good one who didn't need attention or money or time because Marcus needed those things more. You taught me to be self-sufficient. Congratulations. I learned the lesson perfectly. I stepped back inside my doorway. My hand was on the door ready to close it. Wait, Mom said. Olivia, please. We're still your parents. We still love you. I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who taught me how to braid hair and bake cookies and also how to make myself small enough to fit around my brother's needs. You love the daughter who makes no demands, I said quietly. Who asks for nothing. Who absorbs the family's dysfunction and still shows up for holidays. But you don't actually see me, do you? You never have. I'm 31 years old. I have a career you've never asked about. A life you've never shown interest in. Friends you've never met. And the first time you pay real attention to my life is when you want to take my house. That's not fair, Dad started. You showed up with eviction papers, I said. Without calling. Without asking. Just showing up to take. That's who you've always been with me. Takers. And I'm done being the person you take from. I closed the door. Through the window, I watched them stand on my porch for another 30 seconds before finally walking to their car. My mother was crying. My father had his arm around her shoulders. They looked small. Diminished. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in family dysfunction. Marcus called 4 times. The first 3 calls I didn't answer. The 4th time I picked up. Jesus, Liv, you really pulled the nuclear option, he said. No hello. No apology. Mom's been crying for days. Dad's barely speaking. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? I prevented you from making me homeless to cover your gambling debts, I said. You're welcome. It wasn't gambling, it was investing. Marcus, I'm a data analyst. I review financial patterns for a living. What you did was textbook gambling addiction behavior. And Mom and Dad were going to steal my house to enable it. Silence on the other end. Then, they weren't stealing. They thought you'd understand. Family helps family. Family didn't help me pay for college, I said. Family didn't help me when I was eating ramen for dinner 6 nights a week to save money. Family didn't help when I had emergency surgery and nearly went bankrupt from medical bills. But now family needs me to hand over my house. That's different. No, I interrupted. It's not. It's the same pattern it's always been. You need something and everyone expects me to provide it. I'm done. I hung up. But I also pulled my full financial records. Not just the spreadsheet I'd shown the lawyer. Everything. Every bank statement. Every tax return. Every receipt I'd saved going back 13 years. Because I knew this wasn't over. I was right. 2 weeks after the porch confrontation, I received a letter from a different lawyer. This one wasn't trying to claim ownership. This one was threatening to sue me for financial elder abuse and withholding family support in a time of need. The letter claimed my parents had provided substantial indirect support throughout my lifetime that enabled my current financial stability, and that I was morally and potentially legally obligated to reciprocate in their time of need. I read it twice. Then I called a lawyer of my own. Her name was Jennifer Park. She specialized in family law and financial disputes. She was 50-something with sharp eyes and sharper suits, and when I walked her through the situation she smiled. They really tried to evict you? She asked. With paperwork and everything. And you have documentation of the actual financial disparity? I handed her my spreadsheet. Then my bank records. Then the folder I'd shown their first lawyer. She read for 20 minutes without speaking. Then she looked up at me with an expression that reminded me of my favorite professor in grad school. The one who actually saw me as competent instead of lucky. Miss Chin, she said, do you want to just make this go away or do you want to make sure it never happens again? I want to make sure it never happens again, I said. She nodded. Then we're going to file a restraining order based on the attempted fraud. We're also going to draft a cease and desist that outlines the legal consequences if they or any representative acting on their behalf attempts further contact regarding financial claims. And we're going to send a very detailed response to their lawyer explaining exactly why their threat of a lawsuit would constitute frivolous litigation and malicious prosecution. Will that work? It'll work, she said. Because here's what they don't understand. The law protects you. You're an adult. You own your property outright. You owe them nothing. And attempting to use legal intimidation to extract money from you is, itself, potentially criminal. The restraining order was filed on a Tuesday. The cease and desist was sent on Wednesday. By Friday, their lawyer had sent a letter withdrawing all claims and apologizing for the misunderstanding. Jennifer called me that afternoon. It's done. They're backing off. But Olivia, document everything going forward. Every call, every text, every email. Because people like this, they don't usually stop after one try. I know, I said. I did know. Because I'd been documenting my parents' behavior for 11 years. Every dismissal. Every comparison to Marcus. Every time they'd chosen him over me. Not because I was planning revenge. But because I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that the differential treatment was real. Proof that I had the right to protect myself. 3 months later, Marcus called again. Liv, he said, I'm in rehab. 30-day program. Gambling addiction and alcohol dependency. I didn't say anything. I fucked up, he continued. His voice was shaking. I fucked up so bad. And I let mom and dad enable me and I let them, Jesus, Liv, I let them try to take your house. I knew what they were planning. I told myself I deserved the help because I was in trouble and you were fine. I was fine because I worked for it, I said quietly. I know that now. My counselor made me write out a timeline of every time I asked family for money. It's 43 times in 10 years. 43 times. And you know how many times you asked? Twice, I said. The appendicitis loan and a ride to the airport once when my car broke down. Twice, he repeated. You asked twice. I asked 43 times. And they gave me money every single time. And they gave you shit for asking twice. I closed my eyes. I was sitting in my living room in my house that I'd bought with my own money, and my brother was finally seeing me. I can't fix this, Marcus said. I can't undo what they tried to do. But I'm working on me. And I wanted you to know, you were right. About all of it. And I'm sorry. Thank you, I said. We talked for another 10 minutes. Not about money. Not about the house. Just living. For the first time in years, maybe ever, we talked like siblings instead of strangers. When we hung up, I sat in the silence of my home. My parents never apologized. They never called. They sent one email 3 months after the porch confrontation, inviting me to Thanksgiving, if I was ready to move past this unpleasantness and act like family again. I didn't respond. But Marcus did. He sent me a text the day before Thanksgiving. Not going. Told them I'm spending holidays with people who don't view love as transactional. You were right about that too. I spent Thanksgiving with my friends. With people who knew me. Who saw me. Who'd never once tried to take what I'd built. My house is still mine. My life is still mine. And I sleep soundly every night knowing that I protected both. The documentation folder sits in my desk drawer. I haven't opened it since the lawyer's office. But I keep it. Not as revenge. As evidence. Evidence that I was never the problem. That I was never insufficient. That I was always enough. I was just surrounded by people who needed me to believe otherwise. Now I'm surrounded by people who know better. Including slowly my brother. As for my parents, they're dealing with the consequences of 31 years of creating a scapegoat and a golden child. Turns out when the golden child grows up and the scapegoat sets boundaries, the parents are left with nothing but the patterns they built. I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped letting them destroy me. And my house, my beautiful, hard-earned, fully documented as mine house, stands as proof that I was always capable of building something they couldn't take. Even when they tried. Word count, 3,048 words.